Welcome back to 20 Side Adventures. My name is Ryan. On this video, we are going to be looking into Spellhearts. These are a pretty unique magic item to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I don't remember anything like them in 1st Edition. I haven't run into them in previous versions of D&D. If they're currently in 5th Edition or some other game, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Spellhearts are essentially a special type of talisman. Now, talismans are one-use items you attach to your gear to give you a bonus in an instant where you just need a little bit more oomph. For example, I currently have a talisman on my Guardian Shield for a shove attack. So if he needs to shove someone out of the way to better protect the party, can burst that talisman, get a bonus to that shove attack. Spellhearts, however, are permanent. They take up your single talisman slot, but when you use them, they don't go away, so they're a much more long-lasting effect on your equipment. They generally are going to let you cast a spell, though there's some caveats to that we'll dive into, and then they give you a passive bonus depending on the Spellheart. Now, I had intended to do this as a tier list, but just the way Spellhearts are put together, it just didn't really make sense for that, so I'm going to take you through the various levels of them and what they can do for you and your equipment, my thoughts and suggestions on how to best use them. If you like the content we're doing here on the channel, please give a like and a subscribe down below. It really means a lot. And with no further ado, let's get into Spellhearts. All right, here we are, Archives of Nethys, community-built website. The guys that run it are fantastic. Supported by Paizo. One of the best things about Pathfinder is they do not put everything behind a paywall. You can get access to all the Pathfinder rules, equipment, and items on Archives of Nethys. It's a little bit of a lag time getting it up because it is just a few people behind the scenes that are building this website out. So please support them and be very grateful for this wonderful tool for folks who want to give Pathfinder a try and not necessarily sink a bunch of money on getting all of the books. So, Spellhearts, as you can see here, there's a big long list of them. I've kind of broken them into categories of when they become available as their base version. As with most things in Pathfinder, there's greater major versions of these. So we're going to start with the level 3 Spellhearts. These are all the ones that start at level 3 as standard. They all kind of have a very similar formula. Also, I wanted to ask, if anyone's really technical and knows how to make my screen much more legible for you guys when I'm just sharing like this on YouTube, I've gone through a couple tutorials. I've tweaked what I could on my OBS recording thing, and I just can't get it sharper than this. So if someone has any suggestions, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. So we're going to start with the Flaming Star. Again, these all have a very similar theme for how the level 3s all work. If you put them on armor, you're going to gain resistance 2 to a type of damage. In this case, it's fire for the Flaming Star. If you put it on a weapon, all of the weapons have a very specific use case, which is not going to be great for all characters. So what this says is after you cast a fire spell by activating the star, which it's a weird verbiage to me that they do it like this because the base one only has one spell it gives you, and that is the Produce Flame cantrip. At higher levels, you do get access to other fire spells, but it's very specific. I think the verbiage could be much better on all of these is when you cast a spell provided by the Flaming Star, your strikes with the weapon deal an additional 1d4 fire damage until the end of your next turn. So if you're not a caster class, to get this to activate, you'll notice down here you must use the cast a spell activity. So you need to have a class that gives you the cast a spell activity, and then you cast Produce Flames. So now the way around this, we're going to tab over here, is Trick Magic Item. This is a single action where you're going to make a skill roll of the school of magic that this spell comes from. So arcane, nature, occultism, religion. So if you want to be able to routinely use your Spellheart as a truly non-caster, you're going to have to invest in this general feat, which, let's be honest, there aren't a whole lot of general feats that are really compelling, or skill feats in this instance, so you could go either way with this. So that's not too much of a tax, but you're going to have to spend some points to be good at a type of magic knowledge, so arcane, nature, occultism, or religion. The DC is based on the level of the item, so in this case, on the base Spellheart, it's level 3, DC 18. Not too bad, you can routinely cast that. The trouble comes in is you have to spend 1 action to trick the magic item, and then 2 to cast the spell. So you're spending a whole turn to produce this cantrip to then give you a damage bonus on your next attack with that weapon. So for weapons, I don't know how effective the base level 3 Spellhearts really are. For a caster class like, let's say, the Magus, having a Spellheart that speaks to you is just free damage because you're going to be spell striking, which is a cast a spell activity. You hit them with the spell from your spell heart, you're going to get the extra damage this turn, and then next turn you spell strike with a different spell, and you're going to get a damage boost on that turn. So every other turn you're just bouncing from your spell heart to your spell list and dishing out extra damage. So if you're not a caster, it is pretty nice. All the spell hearts give you some casting stats. You're going to get a +7 if the cantrip is a spell attack roll, and it's going to be a 17 if it requires a save for the DC. As you get higher level spell hearts, the greater version coming in at level 8 will now let you cast Fireball once per day, as well as continue to have access to Produce Flame. It's going to boost the damage to 1d6 that your weapon gains. It's going to boost the armor resistance to 5, so now you're getting pretty solid. And these, again, don't take a rune slot. So this is a way to augment your armor, continue to get runes, and have another type of defense damage. It's basically an extra augment slot to your equipment that doesn't require further investiture. So these are just a great option to continue to customize and build out your armor or weapons. Again, I think the armor is a better use case for all classes. Some classes, though, can really benefit from the weapon version of it. As it levels up, it goes to +14 and a DC 24, and then at level 12, where it's a major, you also get access to Wall of Fire, as well as a higher level fireball damage. The weapon damage goes to 1d8, and your resistance moves to an impressive 10 resistance to fire. Not a bad augment to your gear. As you move through just some of the other ones, you have the Grim Sandglass. This is negative energy. This one will give you access to Chilling Touch, the Harm or Heal spell, and then Enervation or Restoration as the major version. These scale up the same, 5 and 10 for the armor, d6 and d8 for the weapon augmentation damage. The Perfect Droplet, this one does something different on the weapon side of things, but you're going to get the same resistance on armor, 2, 5, and 10. And then for the weapon, after you cast a water spell by activating the Droplet, now see, that is a better verbiage in my opinion than the other ones for these. Your body becomes mist-like. Until the end of your turn, you can move through enemy spaces, treating each square in their space as difficult terrain. You can't move through creatures that have the water trait. So essentially, you just get to move through enemies as if they're difficult terrain. Now, it still doesn't say you don't get to incur attacks of opportunity, but you don't have to worry about tumble through. So if you want to, I don't know, in a tight corridor, this might be a cool way to move through people. In most cases, though, since it's difficult terrain, you could just sidestep and around. But for the right instance, this could be a pretty useful item. The Polished Demon Horn does mental damage, so that's kind of an interesting add to your weapon. This one still has legacy content that you're getting resistance to 2 evil and chaotic. That's probably been changed to unholy. The Rime Crystal is doing cold. The Jolt Coil, as it sounds, is giving you electricity resistance and damage. The Pickled Demon Tongue is interesting. It's giving you acid and acid resistance, as well as just resistance to demon attacks. So depending on your campaign setting, hunting this down to protect you from demons could be pretty useful. And then lastly, in the level 3, we have the Trinity Geode. This one is unique from all of the others. While it does give you armor benefits, it's only, again, when you cast that spell. So for the vast majority of classes, if you're not a spellcaster, this one's going to be really hard to justify. You're going to use 3 actions to trick a magic item and cast Scatter Scree to give yourself a 1 resistance to all physical damage except adamantine. For this round and into the next. At higher levels, this goes to 3 and 5 resistance to all physical except for adamantine, so not a bad boost. Again, though, if you're not a magus or a class that is routinely casting spells and would be interested in these spells, this is probably the least effective of the level 3 Spellhearts. The next batch I did from levels 4 to 8, these all work a little bit differently and are a little more effective on the weapon front than the previous level 3 plus ones. We're going to start with the 5 Feather Wreath. This one's pretty cool on armor. You just gain a +1 item bonus to acrobatics checks and a resistance to fall damage. So if you are the acrobat archetype, perhaps, or just someone who's jumping and moving around a lot, you're going to get just a flat bonus without having to buy other equipment, because +1 item bonuses aren't too hard to come by. And should you fail, you're just going to get resistance to fall damage. So that is a pretty nice addition. For weapons, after you cast an air spell by activating the Wreath, which again, I think is the best way to word all of these, you can fly for 5 feet as a single action. You still have to take that action. So like maybe if there's a ledge up and you just want to poop up to it real quick, that's not so bad, but kind of lame in my opinion. And then if you cast one of the spells that is not a cantrip, that moves up to 10 feet, which is a little bit better, but still not a ton of movement for a full action. As this one levels up, the fly distance increases, which it becomes much more useful at these higher levels. The Spiny Lodestone, you're going to get a +1 to athletics checks and a resistance to non-lethal damage. So that's pretty interesting. If you're playing someone who's like a boxer or a brawler type character who's getting in a lot of fistfights and bars, this could be a pretty cool item just to add on for flavor. For the weapons, after you cast a spell by activating the Spiny Lodestone, your strikes are going to deal 1d4 piercing damage. These level up just like the last one's d6, d8. And the resistance moves to 5 and 10. And at, I believe it's, yes, at 12, you're going to get that +2 to athletics. So still kind of a nice little way to get a bump to just a general skill stat, and then have some resistance as well. Thorn Triad, this one is where the armor is affected when you cast the plant spells, but you're getting resistance 2 to bludgeoning and piercing, but a weakness 3 to fire because you're kind of taking on plant-like traits. And then with the weapons, you're going to get 1d4 persistent bleed damage, which those do increase as this goes up. So you could be stacking up to 1d8 persistent bleed, which is a pretty gnarly continuing damaging effect. The Resonating Fork, you gain resistance 2 to sonic damage and a +1 item bonus to saving throws against the auditory and sonic trait. Auditory or sonic traits. So demoralized checks that have the auditory trait, you now get a +1 bonus to your saving throws. Pretty interesting. This weapon, instead of dealing extra damage, however, just causes the deafened condition with no save. So you are just putting a debuff on someone for 1 round or 3 if you critically hit. While perhaps Deafened is not the most debilitating of spells, it does still have some interesting effects, and just to drop it on someone for free is pretty powerful. The Deafened condition increases as this goes up to, 1 minute at the level 12, and for an hour on the critical success. Your resistances move up as normal with the others, 5 and 10, and then it looks like the save stays at a +2 for those auditory traits once you get to the mid-tier one. Next up is the Beastmaster Sigil. Now this one has a difference between melee or ranged weapons. You also do need to note, if it is a thrown weapon, you have to pick if it's giving you the melee or the ranged. It doesn't get to do both. For the armor, you get a +1 item bonus to saving throws against poison. For melee weapon, note here, the sigil grants you an item bonus to athletic checks to trip. You don't have to cast anything. With this, you're just getting a +1 to trip as long as it's on your melee weapon. Now, the ranged weapon does have a bit more nuance to it. You critically hit with the affixed weapon and the target is adjacent to a creature summoned with the sigil. They take an additional 1d6 persistent bleed damage, but you notice it just gives you the tame spell for the cantrip on it. But wait, the base level one at 5 also gives you 2nd level summon animal. It does restrict what you can summon to the cave scorpion, the wolf, or the bat swarm, depending on where you have affixed it onto your equipment. So it's going to be the bat swarm for the ranged weapon for this to really matter, in my opinion. But you're getting 2 spells out the base, and then you also have the potential of just not having to worry about anything to get a bonus on your weapons. As this levels up, the bleed damage on the ranged weapon gets better, and you get higher level summon animal spells. Phantasmal Doorknob. This one on armor gives you a +1 bonus to thievery checks when you're picking a lock. Again, many ways to get a +1 item bonus, but tacking it onto your armor, not a terribly bad idea if you are the rogue type. And then on the weapons, this is cool. If you critically succeed a strike with the weapon, the target becomes dazzled until the end of its next turn. So again, no roll needed. You're just applying a debuff, and it doesn't require you to cast the spell. So this is a great one if you just want to add an extra effect on your attacks. Once you get the leveled up one, it's going to move the dazzled to blinded, so that could be pretty effective as well. Again, a blind with no saving throw just requires a crit, which if you're a melee heavy class like the swashbuckler or perhaps the fighter, you're going to be critting a fair bit. The Enigma Mirror. So this one, both affect your armor and weapons only after casting an illusion spell. The armor one's pretty interesting. You get to apply a mirror image to an ally that lasts for 1 turn, so it doesn't even protect yourself, it's helping out someone else. And then your weapon is affected as if it is under Thicket of Knives, which makes it easier to feint. As this one levels up, it doesn't give you any more benefit to your armor or your weapon, but it does give you more spells and higher level spells to cast from. The Warding Statuette, you get 1 resistance to ranged attacks on your armor, pretty cool. And weapon, when you hit with a strike using the affixed weapon, or when a spell effect you created by activating the statuette hits with a strike, You can choose a creature adjacent to the creature that was hit and grant them a +1 status bonus to AC. So again, this is not having to cast anything from the warding statuette, so that's nice. You don't have to go through Trick Magic item if you're not a caster, and it's still going to give you the benefit of boosting your allies when you hit your enemies. So like for the Guardian, this is a fantastic one to put on their weapon. The Blight Bloom Posy. Armor, you're going to get Speak with Flowers as if it was Speak with Plants. So maybe for a Druid, that's thematically nice. The weapon, which this counts as a disease after you cast a plant spell from the Posy, pollen coat your weapon. Your next strike causes the target to be sickened 1 on a hit, sickened 2 on a critical. So again, applying the debuff, no saves, they are just getting sickened 1 or sickened 2. This one, though, does require you to cast a spell from it, so non-caster classes might be a little tougher, but for a sickened or sickened 2, could be worthwhile. And the last one in the 8+ is the Desolation Locket. This one is like kind of grim, but the locket numbs you to further despair, so you're already kind of sad. This is like Eeyore's favorite Spellheart. You get plus...
There you are.
It's an awful nice tale, Kanga. Much nicer than the rest of me.
You get +2 item bonus to saving throws against the emotion effect if it's on your armor. And if it's on your weapon, after you cast a spell activated by the locket, you emanate a 5-foot aura of hopelessness. And the creature ends its turn in this aura. They have to succeed a will save or become slowed 1 or 2 on a critical failure. So as a magus who's getting into the mix of this, and you're perhaps wanting to use these spells anyways from your Spellheart, and then bam, you're just putting out an aura that could slow all the bad guys in it, and be careful, technically your enemies too. That is a pretty effective option for the magus. Okay, we're in the last batch. This is going to go 9 to 15. First, we have the Sanguine Fang. You gain resistance 3 to persistent bleed damage, and a +2 bonus to any saves against negative trait on your armor, so not too bad. And the weapons, after you cast a spell from the Fang, all of your strikes deal 1d4 persistent. These level up as normal, goes to 5, 1d6, 10, and then 2d6 on the affixed weapon. So actually, that's a little bit higher on the persistent bleed damage your weapon will be doing. So that could be pretty good. The Vigilant Eye, you cannot be flat-footed, hidden, or undetected to creatures of the eye's level or lower. So that's going to be really dependent on when you get this item. And then on strikes, when you make a strike against a concealed target or a hidden target or even an undetected, the flat check is reduced by 1, and this increases each time you get a higher level one. The Saurian Spike is for those of you who really want to turn into a dinosaur. You gain Imprecise Scent 30 feet when it's on your armor, and whenever you cast the Polymorph spell, if it's attached to a weapon, you create a 30-foot emanation where they have to make a DC 27 will save or become frightened. And that DC does increase when you get higher level ones, as well as being able to turn into a scarier dinosaur. Yoti's Feather. This is a pretty cool one if you're going to be fighting the undead. Like, this is the Paladin's Spellheart of choice, in my opinion. You get a +2 item bonus to saving throws against death effects and negative energy. And then you get the Disrupting rune when the feather is affixed. Nothing else you have to do, just a free Disruptive rune. Pretty fantastic for fighting the undead. Item bonus goes to 3 and 4 as you level that up. And then the biggest one gives you the Greater Disrupting rune. Judgment Thurbile? Thurbile? I don't know what that word is. Anyways, the armor gives you the cast a spell. When you use the cast a spell activity, you get Circle of Protection as well. So you're getting a free cast when you cast something with this. So 2 spells for the price of 1. I guess if you're tricking magic item, that's not so bad. It lasts for 1 round, and it has to be in line with your deity's alignment. So make sure you have a deity for this one. After you cast a spell activating the Thurbile, on your weapon, you're going to get Anarchic, Axiomatic, Holy, or Unholy, which all of those have been condensed in after remaster, so you'll just have to check in on that. But basically, a free rune after casting the spells on here, all very holy based, so Divine Wrath, Divine Decree. So for your Cleric or Paladin, this could be a pretty solid choice as well, which if you're a Cleric, maybe the Warrior Priest, this could be a great just all-around option for that style class. The Wormclaw, for when you've chopped the hand off of a dragon. For the armor, after you cast a Conjuration spell, which that'll obviously be gone away again just when you activate the Spellheart using one of its spells, you gain resistance 5 to acid, cold, electricity, and fire for 1 minute. So that, even if you're not a caster, you're going to summon a dragon, which is going to help you out in the fight, and now you're going to have resistance 5 to all energy types. That is a pretty solid trade-off in my opinion. The weapon, again, after casting it, you're going to get a breath weapon that takes 2 actions and deals 66 damage with a 28 reflex save. And you can choose if it's fire, lightning, gives you the line and all that stuff. You can only do it once, and you have to do it before the end of your next turn, but it could be a good way to dish out some extra damage after bringing a dragon friend to come and help you. As this levels up, you're going to get resistance 10 and 15, so that's quite a bit of resistance if you're up to the level 19 item, which is to be expected for level 19, and the breath weapon increases in damage. Ghost Color's Planchette. So for the armor, when you cast a spell, or the weapon when you cast a spell from this one, so this again is going to require you to routinely activate it. Resistance 5 to all physical damage except for Ghost Touch or ethereal creatures, and on your weapon, you're going to get the Ghost Touch rune. So for level 12, Ghost Touch isn't that hard to come by. I don't know if this one's the best choice for the weapon effect, but on the armor, getting to become incorporeal is pretty awesome, and it levels up to 10 at the high level one. Last but not least, at level 16 is the Radiant Prism. So the armor with this, when you cast a spell from the prism, you just shimmer light as if you are a torch, and you become concealed. I don't know if that's worth it for 16. And then on the weapon, you get the Brilliant Property rune. If you get the Major, that becomes Greater Brilliant. And even the lesser does increase the damage on the normal Brilliant rune, so that's kind of cool. And then the armor effect lasts for 2 rounds, regardless of which one you choose. So that is all of the Spellhearts available in Pathfinder. They are an often forgotten item. I also think there is a ton of room for homebrewing and creating your own Spellhearts. I'm a big fan of player-created magic items and letting them come up with interesting things. So maybe if there's a monster with a special ability in like the Dragon Claw, they chop off a bit of that critter, they apply some magic to it. It's a pretty basic formula on how these are put together. So a player's creativity in crafting and making custom Spellhearts by finding spells that coordinate with it, spells that you know. I just think Spellhearts are a real easy place for players to be able to have some creativity and build items that are custom and their own, which I still really feel the crafting component of Pathfinder is really overlooked. I enjoyed it in first edition, even though we tweaked it there also with some homebrew rules to really make it more of a system rather than just, in Pathfinder 1 especially, a cash reduction area, but just a place to save money on getting all the magic items you want. Most of my games involve lots of downtime, so I do like involving crafting more in it, and I think Spellhearts are a great place for players to flex some creativity and help build out the world. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are there any Spellhearts you like to use? Have you made any custom Spellhearts that are really cool? I would love to hear about it. Again, if you like the content we're doing here on the channel, please give a like and subscribe down below. It does help tremendously. And with that, I'm going to wish you a fantastic time on your 20-side adventures. We'll see you next time.